Questions? Yes?
You mentioned toxic positivity and how much you disliked it.
Yes.
What is that?
Toxic positivity is when we see it a lot on social media, when we have to pretend that everything's fine, everything's happy. So it's often if we're having a really bad time, or maybe something's gone wrong, or maybe something's hurting us, and then we try and say, oh well, there's food on my table, there's a roof over my head, everything's okay, and we try and pretend to convince ourselves. And although these things are very true, it actually doesn't help in the moment. And so on this, what we found is individuals who practice gratitude, we're always told practice gratitude, practice gratitude. And yes, we absolutely should. But we've actually found in a lot of psychological studies now, individuals who practice gratitude who became unhappier, because what they were doing was they were writing down all these things that they thought they should be grateful for, but they weren't actually believing it because they weren't given the energy and the time and the space of what was actually making them sad. And so then actually it created more dissonance between what they believed and what they were writing, and they became even sadder. So it's really important that we don't always have to pretend we're happy. We don't have to pretend we're not hurting. We don't have to pretend things are okay. We need to actually give space to feel what we need to feel and give that the respect and the love it deserves. And then we can look for the positive. And so I think that's the biggest differentiator for me. Of course. Yes.
So I recently heard something about how, statistically speaking, the entrepreneurs tend to have a higher internal locus of control rather than an external locus of control. And I know at some point you mentioned about saying that most things are outside of our control, which is kind of contrary to how a lot of entrepreneurs think. How do you balance, because obviously sometimes if you have too much of an external locus of control, thinking that everything that happens in your life is dictated by external factors, that could potentially make you less proactive. How do you balance, because also if you have too much of an internal locus of control, you think you can control everything, and that's not the reality of life.
But both could be positive and negative as well. So internal locus of control, an example might be that you get a promotion, and if you have an internal locus of control, you believe you've got this promotion because you had the skills to be able to be promoted. An external locus of control may be you got the promotion because you got lucky. But at the same time, an example where an internal locus of control might be bad is that you were fired. And so the internal locus of control would say, oh, I was fired because I was not good enough. And you make yourself feel really, really bad. An external locus of control might be, oh, I was fired because the company's about to go under and they had to make redundancies. And so both can be good and both can be bad. And actually taking control of what you can control is slightly different to locus of control, because you don't want to always attribute the external as either that you don't have control over, and the internal is something that's always your fault. You want those two things to work in unison, and you want to be able to reflect on your behaviours using that emotion and that logic, so you can actually think coherently about the situations that are happening and not blame yourself when you don't need to, and equally not blame others when you shouldn't be. But I think the control thing is because there's so much in life that happens, and where entrepreneurs tend to be really good at this is they're very good at when everything is going wrong, they're very good at finding, okay, what can I take control of? Where's the silver lining here? Where is the solution? And so they don't get caught up on everything that's going wrong, which other people may. They go, okay, how do I get through this? So it comes down to that outcome-focused mindset, that growth mindset, that, okay, I can't control the fact that actually we are now in a financial recession, for example. But actually what I could control is how I then change my pricing to try and overcome this recession. That's how an entrepreneur might think about things, or someone who is really good at taking control of what they can. Does that make sense? Yes. You're going to dance? It's worth a try.
Tuesdays, pineapple. From your experience, is there anything that you notice in your career, in your day-to-day work, regarding EI that people seem to be lacking? Or
Yeah, definitely. I think we live in a really busy world, and I think we can get really caught up in our day-to-day, and we're constantly trying to tick the next thing off our to-do list. We're trying to juggle so many responsibilities, personal and professional. And I think particularly we see it a lot in like cities like London, where we become so in our own heads that we really lack empathy and patience and understanding. And even like the kindest individuals of us, you know, we go into meetings or situations where we're not willing to listen, we're not connecting, we're not actually trying to meet people as other humans. And I think we can all really easily lack that at the moment. So I think my biggest thing is like really just trying to take a step back, like whether you're having dinner with your family, whether you're in your 8th meeting of the day, like if you are somewhere, how are you giving that moment your full attention? How are you giving that other human your full energy? And how are you trying to show up as best as you can in a world that can really make us easily forget that we're all humans? That was a bit deep, sorry. We felt that. Yes?
Where people, I can understand how emotional intelligence can lead to people not getting, sorry.
You've got a beautifully quiet voice, but I wouldn't.
I can understand how emotional intelligence could lead to people not getting burnt out, but where people are burnt out, and so they don't have the capacity to maybe employ various traits of emotional intelligence, like motivation and self-regulation, self-reflection, etc. What would your takeaway be? Would it be just to focus on self-care in order to build themselves up to become more resilient?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So there's actually 5 stages of burnout. Not a lot of people know that. And actually the first stage of burnout is called honeymoon phase. And then it moves all the way up to stage 5, which is habitual burnout, which is hospitalization. And so it's important to understand like where you are in the 5 different stages, because burnout's a term we use a lot, but actually most people aren't burnt out. They're really stressed, or they're really sad, or something's going wrong. And so it's about understanding where you're at. And then I would say, like, if you are at that place where you don't even have the energy to call that person you love, you don't have the energy to go to the gym, you don't have the energy to, bring that motivation to that meeting, that you're really struggling, it's actually just about taking a massive step back and saying, like, what do I need right now? And sometimes that's just on a day-by-day basis. It's actually just putting one foot in front of the other. When I was at my worst and when I got out of hospital, like, I couldn't think about going to the gym 5 times a week. I couldn't think about eating well. I couldn't think about like trying to go and fix all my friendships. Like, all I could think about was actually like, how do I get through today in less pain than yesterday? And sometimes that's all you can do. And it's actually just taking that first step. Like, what one thing can I do today? Like, what one conversation can I have? Or what 10-minute stroll can I get with some vitamin D? And actually just building it up really gradually and not putting the pressure on yourself to have to do anything else, and not fighting how you're feeling and not fighting your struggling, just giving it the respect it deserves. Like, if you are exhausted, then you actually just need to take a massive step back and do whatever you need to do to get out of that exhaustion. And then once you got out of that exhaustion, then you can get fancy with it, and then you can put the gym programs in and the nice nutritious meals. But actually the first step is just giving yourself what you need to get out of that moment. All good? Oh, yes.
You didn't mention about the emotional regulation techniques. Did I miss out? Did you go further in that? What are the emotional regulation techniques?
That was, my love, this slide, if you want to take a photo. There you go. This was the emotional regulation exercise. So it's this 6-step process. This is all your emotional regulation techniques. I'm not going to make everyone listen again because it's very hard. But yeah, do you remember now? Yeah, so it's all part of these. And then emotional regulation is broken into suppression versus appraisal. You got it? And then also your RAIN acronym. And that's that part. Beautiful. Yes, at the back. A lot of therapy. I think for me, it was a really gradual process. So my dad was my best friend in the world, and I actually never had to learn I was enough, because my dad would always tell me I was more than enough. And as amazing as that was, and he was super Italian, so every time I walked in the room, he'd be like, "Oh, it's the most beautiful girl in the world." He'd be like, "Oh, it's the most intelligent girl in the world." And he would just completely affirm me all of the time. And so when I lost him, I didn't even realize that I had such a lack of self-worth, that I'd never had to learn it. And so for me, it was like really firstly understanding like who am I? Because how can I be enough if I don't even know who I am? And then it was just like a work in progress. And it's still some days I struggle massively. Like, I don't think we put so much pressure on ourselves to change things overnight. And, you know, I think a lot of these things, they're fluid, and it's about treating yourself with that compassion. So like the days now where I don't feel enough, or, you know, sometimes I'll give a talk and I'll like see one person in the room look at me slightly funny, and I'm just a human as well. So I'll go home and I won't think, oh yeah, 49 people smiled at me tonight. I'll be like, oh my gosh, did you see that person look at me? Like, she hates me, I did a bad job. And so for now, I just create space with that and say, I'm a human, I'm allowed to do that. I don't always have to feel like I'm enough. I don't always have to feel happy. I don't always have to feel proud, but I don't deserve to be a dick to myself either. And so I try and just create the space between those things, and just then really living in alignment with who I am and what my values are. And I think for me, that's massive, and actually just trying to give value in what I do, because then I'm like, how can I not feel if I'm enough if all I'm trying to do is actually make other people happy? So yeah, I think it's that just understanding and love towards yourself. Yes.
Do you ever question your values, or spend any time kind of assessing where your values come from?
And I still do a small amount of one-to-one coaching, and it's something that I make all my clients do like every 6 months. I think it's something you should constantly be reassessing, because like we spoke to earlier, like your life changes so much and life happens so quickly now, that if you're not actually reassessing what's important to you regularly and how you want to show up and what's, you know, relevant to your life and your life in that moment, then they're going to quickly go off track. So yeah, like I think every like 6 months, at least once a year, it's something that everyone should be sitting down with, personal and professional. So these are my personal values, these are my personal boundaries, these are my professional values, these are my professional boundaries, and really like coming back to that a lot.
When you're using values, is that the same as principles or different principles?
Yeah, they sort of interlink, they're really similar. It's, you know, it's what defines you as a person and how you want to be known. Okay. Yes.
Can I check on the test or the questions that you asked at the end of this exercise?
Yes.
I came to as I was doing it, I came to the conclusion that in order for the score to be accurate, you had to have a lot of self-awareness. Because I was going through the questions and I thought, oh, maybe I'm a 3, maybe I'm a 2, or maybe I'm actually really good. But I wouldn't actually really know that until I had really good self-awareness. So I got myself into a bit of a loophole.
I love that. Question your own self-awareness, or trying to work out your self-awareness. We are in the matrix. Yes. For sure.
Just want your take on
and all self-reported data has got to be taken with a pinch of salt, right? Because it will depend on your mood, it will depend on what's happened to you today, it will depend on how tired you are. It's never going to be 100% accurate, but it's done what it's meant to do, because it's made you actually say, like, oh, am I self-aware? Is this something I need to work on? And actually, if you struggle to do that because you struggled with your self-awareness, then there you've got your one thing that you need to action when you leave this room, right? Because it's answered that for you. So what do you need to action? How will I know my self-awareness? One final question from the hand at the back, and then I'm going to let you all go because it's my bedtime.
Yeah, so probably repeating others, but I think it's like very important questions again. So how to cope with negative, I would say, comments, because when you start to become public, and they're all a little bit public because we're all social media, more people you know, and maybe it would be, if you increase your circle, it would be like more negative something.
Yeah, I got trolled for the first time on Human OS this week. I'm with you, don't worry about it.
Yeah, what to do when someone is looking to you like funny,
Of course. I think, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I keep speaking about it tonight, but when you really know yourself and when you really have done the work on yourself to know who you are and why you're deserving and why you're enough and why you're worthy, when you have done that work, you don't care. Unfortunately, and the gym. But no, when you really understand who am I, and I am enough for the person I am, and I am worthy, and I am doing the best I can, and it's in line with what I believe in and how I want to show up, then all the comments, most of the time, obviously comments are hurtful, but most of the time you're going to be like, that's a reflection of you. And I come back to what I said earlier, like no one happy says nasty things. So dissociating that, knowing that if they were a full, happy, fulfilled, kind person, there's no way that they would say that to you, look at you like that, take that action. So why are you taking that from someone who doesn't even know themselves? You're a queen. Go to Pineapple on a Tuesday night. Okay. Guys, it's late, it's hot. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.